darlings, Mimi G here, mimigstyle.com, and I'm so excited to be able to offer these step-by-step video tutorials to accompany my simplicity patterns. Today we're going to be sewing view C of pattern 1283. Let's get started. Let's cover some of the basic tools you're going to need. You will of course need pattern 1283. It comes in size 6 through 14 or 16 to 24. You're also going to need 2 pairs of scissors, one for your fabric and one for your paper. You're going to need some pins, a seam ripper is handy, some pattern weights, although I use just large washers from my local home improvement store. You're also going to need a coordinating thread and zipper. The pattern is designed for knits, so you can use any two-way stretch knit, a ponte, or a double knit will work just fine. Today I'm going to be using this beautiful eggplant double knit fabric. For this pattern we're going to be using 3 pattern pieces, the front leg, the back leg, and the waistband. So we need pieces 9, 10, and 11. The one thing I want you to take account of before you start cutting your fabric is 1, choose your size based on the finished measurement on your tissue paper and then cut your pattern size. The next thing you want to do is to make sure that you account for the length. And so if you plan to wear your pants with heels, then you want to put those heels on and measure your inseam. So you're going to measure from the inside of your leg all the way down to the floor, wearing whatever shoes you intend on wearing with these pants. If you intend on wearing flats, do the same thing. Measure from underneath your crotch all the way down your inseam to the floor, and then make any adjustments to your pattern pieces. Now if you need to lengthen your pattern piece, this line here that you see, 2 double lines, this is where you would lengthen your pattern piece. So you would cut it and then spread apart however much space you needed. Let's say you needed to add 2 inches. You would spread it apart 2 inches. You can either tape some paper underneath it to fill in the gap, or simply place your pattern washers on top of it after it's on your fabric. Before we cut out our pattern pieces, we're going to lay out our fabric with right sides facing each other. The right side is the fabric side that people will see, and it should be folded in half lengthwise with selvage edges meeting. I have folded my fabric in half lengthwise with selvage edges meeting, and I have laid my pattern pieces on top of my fabric. The right side of my fabric is facing each other, so the wrong side of the fabric is facing me. And I have placed my washers along my pant leg, and I'm going to cut around each leg and my waistband. After we cut our pieces out, we're going to transfer notches, dots, and darts. Now that I've cut out my pant legs, I'm going to show you how I transfer my darts. Also make sure that you have made a snip wherever you see a notch. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you really quickly how I like to transfer my dart legs. And so what I do is I find the size that I'm going to use for these pants. I'm using a size 8. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little clip at each leg. And then I'm going to put my pin at the dot at the bottom, and then I'm going to remove my paper and I'm going to make a dot just like I marked my other markings. I'm going to remove that, and what I do is I take my ruler and going from one dart leg to the dot, I make a line, and then I move over to the other notch, which is the other dart leg, and I make another line. And now I have my darts. And then I just turn this around and do the same thing. Now all that's left to do is for you to cut out your waistband and cut out some interfacing for your waistband. Now this is an ultra weft lightweight knit fusible interfacing that I'm using. It's 85% rayon, which is really great. It works really nicely, it fuses well, and it stays even after multiple washings. So what I like to do is I lay my fabric and my interfacing on top of each other. Then I lay my pattern piece on top and I cut them out at one time to make sure that they're both the same size. Once I've cut out both my waistband and my interfacing, if you feel one side is kind of bumpy, that's the size that has the glue, and so you want to make sure that that side is facing the wrong side of your interfacing. And you're going to use your iron and you're going to press and hold. Don't do this. Just press and hold until you reach the very end. Once they're fused together, they become one. I like to transfer the markings on my pattern piece to my waistbands after I have fused it together. So now I'm going to lay my pattern piece on top of my waistband, and I'm going to make all of my slits for my notches. And using my fabric marker, I'm just going to mark my dots. Now I've transferred my dots and my notches, and my waistband is finished and ready to sew. Now that we've cut out both pant legs and our waistband, we're ready to sew. The first thing we're going to do before we start sewing our pant together is we are going to sew the darts on each pant leg. So what I like to do is I like to pin to make sure that both dart legs are aligned. So I pin on one side and then I look to make sure that I'm matching the other side, and then I'll pin it in place. And then starting at the top, you're going to sew all through that line that you have there, and you're going to sew directly off of it. We're not going to backstitch, we're going to sew directly off of it and tie off our ends. So backstitch at the beginning. Pull your threads. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie off our dart. That way we don't have a little bump or a ripple from trying to backstitch. So I like to do 3 little knots, and then I'll trim off my threads. And now you're going to do that same thing to the other 3 darts. Okay, we're going to start by sewing one back to one front leg at the inseam. And so what you're going to do is you're going to make sure, one, that you're using your ballpoint needle and you have your stretch stitch or narrow zigzag stitch setting on your machine. And we're going to place the front over the back, and we're going to pin at the notch in the inseam. We're sewing the inseam of our pant leg first, and then pin at the crotch. And then you want to pin at the bottom, so make sure that the bottom of your pant legs are matching. And you want to pin there, and then maybe a couple more pins along the leg. And starting at the bottom, we're going to sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way up. After you've sewn your inseam, go ahead and either serge this or trim off your seam allowance to 1/4 inch, and we're going to sew the other leg the same exact way. Okay, I've sewn both inseams and I finished my seam allowances, and so now I have them open and laid on top of each other with right sides facing. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert our invisible zipper. Now the instructions call for an invisible zipper foot, and the instructions for that are great. However, if you are like me and don't have an invisible zipper foot, I'm going to show you an alternative method to insert your invisible zipper using a standard zipper foot. The first step is to pin our crotch. So I'm going to pin at the inner leg seam, and I'm going to pin the double notch, which is actually for the front of our pant leg, not the back. And we're going to sew starting at the front pant leg, and we're going to sew all the way around the crotch using a regular stitch length of 2.5 until we reach that single notch. And when we reach that single notch, we're going to change our stitch from 2.5 to the longest stitch you have, a basting stitch, and we're going to continue sewing up the back. So starting at the front and using your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch and start to sew. When you get to the single notch, remove your pin and double back stitch. Change your stitch length to the longest stitch you have and continue sewing to the very top. Now we have sewn the entire crotch curve, and we have basted from the single notch all the way up the back. Now I want you to go ahead to your ironing table and press this seam open about an inch below the notch. I have switched my presser foot to a regular zipper foot, a standard zipper foot, and I have moved my needle as far left as it will go, and I have now pressed my seam open in the back. And so we're just working on the back of the pant. We're going to pin our zipper. I'm using an extra long zipper so that my zipper pull is out of the way while I'm sewing, and I'll just trim that away when we attach our waistband. So I am going to pin, making sure that the center of my zipper is aligned with the seam. And so I'm just going to pin at the top. And then I'm going to pin again just past the notch to keep my zipper in place. And then working on only this seam allowance, we're going to sew down our zipper using a basting stitch. It's just to hold it in place. And then turn it over and move the rest of the pants to the other side, so you're only working on this seam allowance. And you're going to do the same thing. Once you've done that, we're going to turn it to the right side, and we're going to open up that basting stitch. Now if you don't remember where to stop, look on the underside and see where we started our basting stitch, and pin through all layers. And that'll be your mark, so you know to stop there. You can remove all of your basting stitches. Once you remove your basting, go ahead and open your zipper. Remove your pin. And you want to pull your zipper through that hole. You want it completely out of the way. So if you need to pull on it from the underside, you can. Put it as far down as you can. And then you're going to go back to the wrong side. And starting at the top, you're going to make sure that your needle is as far left as it can be, and you're going to sew as close to the zipper teeth as you can without sewing on your zipper teeth. Using a regular length stitch, just open your zipper teeth as you're sewing, just pull it open a bit and continue sewing all the way down. Now working on the other side and working from the bottom up, you're going to do the same thing. So close to the zipper teeth. Go ahead and close your zipper, and when you turn it around, you see that we've done a very nice and easy to install invisible zipper without an invisible zipper foot. So once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and sew the sides of our pants. So what you're going to do is you're going to lay your pants with right sides facing, front to back, and we're going to pin all down the side of our pant leg. So I'm going to start at the top where I see my notch, and I'm going to pin, and then I'm going to work my way down my pant leg, and I'm going to pin again. And then of course I will pin at the bottom. And then maybe one more time up the pant leg. And you're going to do this for both sides. You're going to pin both side seams of your pants. Now I'm going to have you sew this long stitch using a basting stitch. So the longest stitch that you have, because I want you to sew a basting stitch on both sides and then try them on to see if you need to take them in or let them out before we do a permanent stitch. So I'm going to change back to my regular presser foot. I'm going to put my needle back to its normal position. I'm going to use a basting stitch, so make sure you're using a basting stitch, a very long stitch. And we're going to sew, starting at the top all the way down. Once you've sewn your basting stitch on both pant legs, go ahead and try the pants on to see if you like the fit. Now remember, these are very fitted high waist knit trousers that are meant to be fitted through the hip down to the knee and then flare out. So go ahead and try them on, see if you like them, take them in or out however much you need to, and then we will go ahead and sew our permanent stitch at 2.5 all the way down the pant leg. I have tried my pants on and made any adjustments I needed to, and now I have finished my seam allowances with my serger, and I do have my permanent stitch in now, so I just sewed right over my basting stitches. And now we're going to sew up the hem, so I went ahead and I finished the hem of my pant legs with my serger. So if you have a serger, go ahead and finish that off. And then you're going to measure up 2 inches, because this allows for a 2-inch hem allowance, and you're going to sew close to the edge. Now I've already pressed mine out because I find it easier to press the 2 inches before I start to sew them. And so I'm going to start at one side seam, and sewing close to the edge, I'm going to stitch all the way around using a 3-point stitch length. And I'm stretching slightly as I am sewing because we need to ease in some of the fullness of the turn. Another way to ease in the fullness is you can sew a gathering stitch 1/4 inch from the bottom all the way around, and then as you're sewing your hem, if you feel there's too much fullness, you would just pull on your gathering stitch for it to kind of gather a bit and take out some of that fullness. There isn't much fullness in mine, so I'm just going to pull as I'm sewing. And stretch and pull just a tad. You can finish the hem the same way we finished the other one. Now all that's left to do is to attach our waistband. So as you can see, I have turned up 5/8 of an inch and I've pressed it. And I am going to now pin my waistband to my pants, right sides facing of course. And I'm going to start in the center. So in the center we have our center front seam and we have 2 notches. So we're going to match those 2 notches on our waistband. And we're going to pin. And then I'm going to make sure that my dot that we have on our waistband is matching up to our side seams. And then I'll do the other side. And one side is going to extend 5/8 of an inch. And the other side is going to extend a bit further because it overlaps, and we are going to add a snap. So I'm going to pin. And now we're going to start to sew our waistband onto our pant. Starting with the side that has the long extension, we're going to sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to sew through the zipper teeth, so just be careful. Once we've sewn our waistband onto our pant, it's now safe to cut off any zipper that's extending beyond that point if you used a longer zipper like I did. And so what we're going to do is on the shorter side, the one that has 5/8 of an inch, we're going to fold it over like this. We're going to close that out. So we're going to fold it over like this, and we're going to sew really close to where our zipper teeth is. So if it's easier for you to make a mark, you can put your needle right there, right where your zipper teeth are meeting at the waistband, and you're going to sew that 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to put my needle down first. And I'm going to backstitch. And so you can see that my stitching is right where my zipper teeth end, going all the way up. So when you turn it to the inside, you have a clean finish. Now for the part that has the longer overlap, we're going to do it a little differently. So I want you to turn your pants so that they're facing the waistband. And you're going to fold over, and you're going to pin right where you know your waistbands and your zipper teeth are. So you're going to pin right there. That's where you're going to stop sewing. And we're going to sew down 5/8 of an inch and then 5/8 of an inch across until we reach our pin. And when you get there, you're going to pivot over, backstitch, and then sew until you get to your pin. And backstitch. Now we're going to trim some of this off. And then you just pull it. Push it through. If you have a point turner, that'd be great. And just push your corners out. And then the zipper part just goes inside, and you won't see it. Now I want you to take this to your ironing table, and I want you to press your seam allowance up towards the waistband. And then all that's left to do is for you to slip stitch your waistband closed. Now I have folded over and pressed my waistband, and so the folded edge is right up against the stitching. And I've pinned just to keep it in place. And so what you're going to do is you're going to insert your needle so that the knot is on the inside. And you're just going to catch just the stitching thread and just a couple of threads of the waistband. And so you're just going to catch just a little bit. Just a little bit of the stitching and then a little bit of the waistband. Insert your needle through your thread. And you're going to do that all the way down your waistband. All that's left to do is to hand sew our hook closure. So we're going to start with the little bar first. And you're going to place it right where your zipper is. So try to align it with your zipper teeth. Right about the center. And sewing through all layers, you can make a couple of stitches in each hole. Cut your thread and do the same thing for the top. And then on the other side, on the underside, you're going to hand sew the hook. Continue until you're done with both little holes and that center one, and you are all done. That's all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed sewing along with me, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Peace!